Tree Talking Time is brought to you by Conkey's Outdoors. Get all your hound hunting needs at conkeys.com. Welcome to Tree Talking Time, where we talk all things tree dogs, from the smallest feists to the largest hounds, treating squirrels to bears and everything in between. And from time to time, we might even run a little fast game. Need reliable housing for your animals? Animal Housing Solutions in Mayo, Florida builds custom coops, kennels, and shelters that are strong, durable, and designed with your animal's comfort in mind. Whether you need a large-scale kennel or a small custom chicken coop, they've got you covered. Quality craftsmanship, great service, and solutions built to last. That's the Animal Housing Solution promise. Check them out at Animal Housing Solutions on Facebook. Animal Housing Solutions, where your animals come first. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Rex Bowers. Most people knew me for raising leopard curs with the capital C for cur on the cur side of the leopard hound world.
Yep.
But very few people knew that I had a fascination with July hounds or plots or mountain curs or Calhouns.
Yeah.
Which I've found all of those very interesting too. It's all looking in the rear view mirror to me now, but I still enjoy talking about it.
And I will say, you have one of the best memories I've ever come across on someone that could just spout this stuff off like, it's incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. Sometimes I can't remember what I want to for sure when I need to.
You know way more than most people by a long shot, and so. But I recently replayed your issue, and several people were like, "Hey, you need to have him on," and especially last night after you were texting me about these Julys, we need to make sure it happens. So, thank you.
Well, that got my attention with Charlie Walker. I've heard of him for 50 years for sure.
Well, like I said on that text, when you started texting about your Julys, I'd really like to learn more about your Julys. Of course, I'm always keen to learn some more leopard history. So definitely, if it
that's the common denominator, isn't it? Leopard. That's what got me curious about them years ago. Just the leopard color. And I mean, you just look at them at a distance, you'd think looks like the same animal.
Yeah.
To look at them at a distance. Where I come across that, and I still collect July history. I sometimes just Google up July and see what pops up. Last night, Charlie Walker popped up, and I said, "Well, yeah, I believe I know what this is." So I sat there and listened to it. I can remember when it was country here, like what he still has, and I can run fox right here in my yard. Matter of fact, I've got fox coming through the yard every night about 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
They're here, they just den right around here and see them every day. And I've got a fox hound that I've kind of got trained not to go too far, but nothing like it used to be when fox hunting was very popular around here. Grew up around it. It was kind of in your way when you was coon hunting because so-and-so was running over on that place. And, you'd have to dodge the foxhounds, going to the coon trees.
Yeah.
There weren't no Julys right around here. All the people that had around here were either walkers or pot lickers. A lot of pot lickers in this country people fox hunted with were just fox dogs. I don't guess they were registered as anything.
Okay.
But the July history always fascinated me. And I had dozens of them and kept and raised them for 20-some years, but I'm definitely not ever considered myself a July breeder or a traditional fox hunter. And that I was just fascinated by the history of them. And kind of the more I read, the more curious I was, and then it got my attention.
I think honestly that's what draws me to the leopards is I like the history. Like, I like the dogs, don't get me wrong. I'm a cur dog guy. But I think I could probably find a cur dog, other cur dogs that I would like. And I've had other, best dog I've ever had was just a great dog. I couldn't tell you what she was. But
just a cur dog, right?
Yeah. But I think the history is the biggest thing that keeps me pulled to the leopard dogs. I mean, I like a merle dog, don't get me wrong. I think they're cool looking. but I just think it's a cool history.
Well, I think those histories have a definite connection.
I think you're right. And when
But
I had Charlie
July,
on, that's what I was kind of trying to allude to, because there's I look at Julys and then I look at Leopards and I'm like, there's a lot of similarities,
man, he
especially.
brought up the Goodmans. He brought up Goodmans. You don't see, you'll see a few Goodmans they've got merle patches on their piebald spots. But
Okay.
years back, they would be blue leopard, just like a blue leopard cur.
Okay.
They were real big up here in the mountains, in Waynesville, in that area up there around where the plots originated in the 1940s. That was kind of the mecca of the leopard-colored Goodman hounds up there.
Okay.
A couple of people that were big, breeders and writers wrote a lot of good articles on the history of the Goodman, which Goodman is 7/8 July. A Trigg, he's part July. And running walkers all have a little bit of the same ancestry, too, for that matter. They just bred different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
I can't prove that modern-day leopard curs, when I say modern day, I'm talking about after 1950s when they started being promoted as leopard curs. The oldest breeders of them I can track back come from Taney County, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Ross Porter and Jake Wolf
document
this through articles in magazines were breeding them. Didn't call them leopard curs, they called them calico-colored coon dogs.
Okay.
Right out there where Charlie lives,
Mm-hmm.
Those Midwestern dogs came from that area right out there. And the Cowboy Williams thing, they cat hunted and wolf hunted with dogs that were crossed on Goodmans and Julys, and I've got old hunter's horns, where they have the registration in the back.
Yeah.
Where you'd find their names in there with those dogs. O.H. Bates, in the 60s had dogs that were registered as half American cur and half Goodman.
Okay.
So they were crossing them. And I saw some in the early 70s down east that Noah Leggett must have kept 150 dogs, running dogs.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And I could not tell, I couldn't tell at that point if I seen a pretty leopard one. I just assumed it was a leopard cur,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that some of them were foxhounds and some of them were ones they used for a coon. But I think they done a lot of bobcat and gray fox hunting, and if they treated coons, they were a coon dog.
Yeah.
I think the way a lot of that worked, and bobcat hunting was kind of really big 50s and 60s, and those dogs were real popular for that.
Now, those dogs back then, did they tree well or not really?
I didn't hunt with any Julys then, but my understanding was they treat good on bobcat.
Okay.
Most of the cats in the eastern part of the state, they don't tree no way. And the gray fox, they'd catch them on the ground.
Oh, okay.
You just never tree a bobcat down there. They catch them. Guys I'd sell cat dogs to down there, they'd tell me the big thing in that sport was to be the man that came out of the thicket with the cat after the dogs caught it.
Yeah.
Who was the man that brought the cat out? I can kind of see that, because when you bait a bear, you had to crawl into them. But I guess as cat hunters, they after dogs catch and kill them, they'd bring them out. They didn't shoot many of them. They let the dogs catch them.
Yeah. I know even in Texas, that's kind of the way it is. They've got a brush where they tree, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just get them to bail out and then the hounds catch them.
Right. Gray fox tree just like a bobcat. If a dog will tree if you hunt where there's gray fox and you can tree gray fox, they tell me you can, catch bobcat with the same dog.
Mm-hmm.
I've had several dogs that would catch and tree gray fox, but now that's not like treeing a coon that's been up a tree. Just the dog has to, find the tree and tree it without running it.
Yeah.
running it to the tree. But the Julys that I had, the ones that were tree dogs, just like a coon dog.
Okay.
If anything, they were more accurate. They weren't tree happy like some coon dog tree dogs are. You know, get wanting a tree and just tree. I've never had any that do that. I've had some that would stay treed a long time, and I had a couple that coon hunted.
Okay.
I had a one dog in particular would have just been an extraordinary coon dog, and she got run over. Just a natural born tree dog.
Mm.
But probably less than half of the full Julys would tree.
Okay.
They would probably stay at a tree. Real bears, real fighters. Most of them I had any dealing with. I noticed you asked Charlie if Julys were gritty. and I was waiting to hear his answer because I learned this a long time ago. Fox hunters don't look at grit the way coon hunters and bear hunters do. A gritty dog is one that can run 12 hours and not quit. He's got the grit. You know, he's got the big D, determination and grit. That's how they.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Just a different game.
Most of them are gritty.
Okay. You
got the picture of the Blondie dog?
Yes, I did.
She was the first registered July that I had. And this was about early 1980s. I'd sold a gentleman in Rockingham County a big brindle mountain cur, good coon and squirrel dog. And he had told me that his brother had some leopards. That's just, it. And then a few weeks later, they showed up at my house, and man, wanting to know if he could breed one of his leopards to one of my leopards, And I got talking, he said, asking if they were registered. And back then, they, would pull your papers if you bred to a dog that wasn't a registered leopard, which I didn't like. But
I think I remember seeing that.
But anyway, they told me they run deer and fox and everything with these dogs, and I thought, no, I don't, I'll let you have a young dog, but I don't want to breed my dog somebody try to get my papers pulled. And I regretted that. I still regret not doing that. But anyway, got my curiosity out, and I went to visit these people, and they were tobacco farmers and must have had 30, 40 dogs. I don't know, man. It was Norris Carter, and his son was Mike Carter. And they deer hunted with them, and they had Calhouns. I'd never seen a Calhoun prior to that, which were a crow-black foxhound, about extinct now. And they had
I've heard the name, I've never seen one.
I had to get a pair of them too. I was curious about them too. I'd never laid eyes on one, but Mike's father, he was curious. He was curious about dogs, and he had things that were kind of unusual over there. Got my curiosity up too. But the man that had the mountain cur, he kind of got me in touch with the guy that had the running dog leopards. They weren't leopard curs. And then the next trip I was over there, he had like 2 tractor and trailer loads of chain link laying around his tobacco farm. I'd never heard of a fox pen before that either. I said, well, what you going to do with all that chain link? He said, well, I'm going to fence my farm in. I can run my dogs anytime I want. But anyway, that's how I first come in contact with somebody that actually had registered July. And I bought 2 that were half July and half Calhoun. They were real pretty dark blue leopards with brindle trim. I bought Blondie, which is kind of a saddleback leopard, kind of the color of my leopard curs. I didn't really realize the value of a foxhound or anything about them. It was complete. Although I started out with a foxhound, she wasn't in that category of dog. She would run and run all night. I'd turn her loose, when the fox hunters were hunting when I was 13, 14 years old. And she'd go run all night, come home the next day. But nothing like those dogs. I guess the closest thing I could compare them to would be maybe like a greyhound.
Okay.
These dogs extremely agile, extremely physical dogs. And Blondie and the dogs that I raised out of her, had a female out of her, Fancy, that I kept and raised pups out of. And if I went to get them to put a collar on to turn them loose, and they see me come into the pen, they'd just go haywire. And I'd have to go in the pen and close the gate, and it was a difficult job to collar them because they got so excited. I've never seen dogs quite get like that, just in a frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just had like an adrenaline. And my experience has come to be that that's one thing that separates July from the rest of the fox dogs.
Okay.
They've got an adrenaline level that nothing else quite has. And when you turn about 6 or 8 of them loose and they jump something, you definitely hear it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you slam the door shut on a rat terrier's tail when they hit a track. I mean, just scream and squall and squeal. Not like a hound now.
Yeah.
Not like a coonhound. I've heard some leopard curs with that kind of voice that kind of get more distant as time goes on. I bought several other dogs from different people within a year or two of that. They were almost the same bloodline as Blondie, which was out of a dog called Pecos Gordy that was, I didn't know at the time, but he was, I guess, the top foxhound stud dog in the country. He had won a $10,000 speed and drive they put on. And people, just bred
mm-hmm.
walkers and, everything besides July to that dog. But if there was any dominant dog in the July breeding, not just mine, but what people were breeding back then, it would be that Prairie View Copper.
That's the one thing I kind of like about the foxhound registries is you can basically register whatever.
Sure.
And I think, and I kind of like the UKC X breed program because it's the same kind of deal. I mean, with a little exception, but it just keeps people honest. Or it allows them an avenue to breed whatever they want to breed and still be able to utilize the dog. Versus, and I think that's the biggest problem we had in the leopard breed is a lot of people were behind the barn breeding this to that. On paper, it was something else.
Something else. The biggest thing years back, people say they'd inbred and bred to a dog they had at home, and actually they'd took and bred to something else and used, inbred pedigree or something to cover up an outcross, and it would show up down the road. And it's sad that the foxhound people have a totally different perspective on breeding than coon hunters. They're not near as I'm going to breed to mine and that kind of a mentality. All of those people that are in that July Association, July National thing, which is not a large group, I'd say less than 24 active people. But for years and years, they all travel across the country wherever the national field trial is. But when somebody's dog wins that, everybody's on board to breed to it or get pups out of it.
Yeah.
And they, whoever's winning that national field trials wants bred to. Same way with walkers.
Yep.
As far as the registration goes, I really like it. There's no time. I see people in the back of the horn register dogs 3 and 4 generations back. You ever look at that?
Mm-mm.
Well, I learned this. They keep 2 and 3 and 4 litters, the whole litter, and raise them to the 2 years old. Won't let nobody have one for love or money. Won't register them. Didn't register their parents and didn't register their grandparents because they don't want other people to know what the breeding is after they pan out. Once they pan out, they'll go back and do the papers on several generations at a time.
Never heard of that.
They do it all the time. Not many of them registered when they're, puppies.
Okay.
Little puppies. They'll wait. People hunting that trial, they won't register them it'll come out in the magazine after the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good sportsmanship, but they really are competitive amongst each other.
Oh, yeah.
Wonder what so-and-so is going to bring this year,
Well, I think that's one thing that the foxhound people have on the coonhound people is they still keep big kennels. And I think for bettering breeds, you have to produce a lot of puppies.
Numbers. number. Yeah, sure.
Because A, it creates genetic diversity, and B, you see what's working. You see what crosses are working. And I think that's the biggest thing that, in the leopard breed today, we've dwindled down to not near as many people, and people don't keep as many dogs, and we don't produce as many puppies today as what was produced 30, 40, 50 years ago. And
Well, we
so,
had a good group of about half a dozen people that worked together for
mm-hmm.
a long period of time and bred almost the same breeding and swapped dogs and puppies and hunted together and worked together. And I'm sure that was good for everybody in North Carolina at that time. Yeah, I don't know. Competition hunting and coon hunting kind of discourages that some way, but the way the foxhound field trials are, it's a little more fair because it's the first 10 dogs that come by. The first one gets 10 points, the second one gets 9, and so on. And the judges don't know, most cases don't know the people or the dogs. All they see is a number on a dog when it comes by, and we can score it. So it's relatively fair the way they score the field trials. They work together real good in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
I assume there's still some July breeders somewhere down in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi that nobody knows the breeding and won't when they die.
Mm-hmm.
The purest of the Julys, unfortunately, a lot of them are bred that way. They, out of the group of people they hunt with, they never sell a dog or a puppy. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, coon hunters sell puppies and whatnot. Kind of a strange situation to that. Took me a while to understand that I wasn't just going to pop in and buy a puppy nowhere.
Yep. Well, and I think I don't want to say it's easier, but because you hunt, I think when you coon hunt, a lot of people that coon hunt, they want to single dogs out. When you single dogs out, it takes more time and you can't keep a bunch of puppies. Where with, hog hunters, fox hunters, even bear hunters, you can keep a bunch of puppies because you're hunting as a pack. You swap out. Maybe you don't take all the puppies at once, but you're hunting dogs as a pack. So it's, you're taking multiple dogs at a time. So.
Well, coon hunters used to hunt would be more pack-oriented years back than they are now. But again, I think competition hunting changed the pack mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how many competition hunts you go on, but I haven't been one in 30 years. But if a dog goes in the same direction as another dog, he ain't no count. He's got to go the opposite way as far and fast as he can and get treed.
Yep.
It's just the opposite of a pack. So, there's no incentive to have dogs that work together in the competition world. I knew some people that claimed it would be the death of leopard curs to register them as hounds because people would competition hunt them and breed for dogs that weren't pack dogs. Richard McDuffie was adamantly against it because he was a pack person. He pack hunted his leopard curs to the end of his hunt.
Okay.
He always took 3 and 4 dogs.
Yeah.
A lot of people did, way back. And he had a pack that worked good together.
Mm-hmm.
O'Neill Bennett and Tommy Bird's dog. Everybody talked about O'Neill and Tommy's pack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody out in Colorado, and even a lot of the Western guys that coon hunt, they pack coon hunt.
I liked it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it that way. I always tried to. Even when I hunted by myself, I took about 4 dogs, which I usually took, 2 young dogs and 2 old dogs. I've known coon hunters that would never take but 1 dog.
Oh yeah, I know plenty.
Yeah, but I think it used to be more like fox hunting in the respect that people took packs of dogs. The bobcat hunting, it was packs.
Yep.
I think competition hunting changed coon hunting in that regard.
Oh, for sure. But I think that just makes it that much harder for an individual to keep multiple puppies at one time when you're trying to single puppies out and make them do it by themselves.
Right. That kind of changed my thinking on training pups, which I trained dogs for a living in the 80s. Most of what I got was mountain curs.
Okay.
Most of them were Kimmer mountain curs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd squirrel hunt them in daytime and coon hunt them at night. Come back in and get more dogs and, hunt about all night like that. Which I did it, coon hunting. I didn't do any kind of artificial anything. Mm-hmm. It was just all taking them all with trained dogs, which, started puppies before they were big enough to hunt for people too, what I call pre-training. It's basically, just socializing them and getting them used to the timber and stuff, which I think was valuable.
Oh yeah,
I still
absolutely.
think so. I don't think you can, start one too young. You can ruin one, but you can't start him too young.
Oh yeah.
But it was educational to see all the mountain curs come in like that. But I took several dogs at a time. But I guess John Wick changed my thinking after I read his book on, the way to handle a pup and get them to tree, which I thought it was a good thing, especially for cur. When you went to the tree, you'd tell them, "Come on, can't get him," and they'd quit treeing and follow you out of the woods, like an obedience trained police dog.
Yep.
I had them where they'd do that. But then I got it in my mind that one of the 1,000 times when they leave a tree, maybe I can do something about that. And I got to where I tied all my dogs at the tree, especially the young dogs. Would shoot the coon down, let the pup, as soon as it hit the ground, I'd let them get their teeth on it for just a few seconds, and then I'd let them watch me put it in my coat. I always wanted them to know that it was my coon at that point we were there. But I kind of got to where I looked at individual training of a dog a little different. But the dogs changed too. The coon hunting changed. The coon hunting changed to where we had more coons, and it took less and less of a wide hunting track dog and more of just a locating tree dog. So that kind of changed. But I think that when I very first started hunting with leopard curs, they resembled Julys a lot more than they did gradually through the years. I think they were a lot closer relation at that point. Had a lot more in common because some of the coon dogs were also bobcat dogs and gray fox dogs and combination dogs, and that kind of changed through the years. And I know leopard curs, even when they were still leopard curs, become more leopard hound through the years.
Oh yeah.
I'm not knocking that. Just they got a little houndier and a less courier. And one thing I've come to the conclusion for sure with messing with Julys is what a lot of people, including myself, thought was cur was fox dog.
Yeah.
Run with her head up, run to catch, real alert, looking to see what they're doing, cutting corners and all that I thought maybe was cur. Come to the conclusion for sure was July characteristics. If you look online, you'll see fast, quick to jump and run to catch. It's kind of the July, motto has been. They're always, maybe 35 years ago, I wrote an article in Full Cry, and I gave a description, quoted a man describing his young dogs, how they hunted with their head up, hunted into the wind, and when one made a lose, the rest of them would be quick to cover the one that opened out front, and the way they, worked the track and everything. And I didn't name where I got my quotation. My phone lit up from blackmouth cur people and leopard cur people and from all over the South saying that you're describing, give a physical description of the short pointed ears and the cowlicks on the shoulders and elongated foot instead of a cat foot. And I got all sort of calls from people saying, well, that's our curs. And I said, no, that's a July foxhound in 1865. According to Larry Birdsong, that wrote it in a magazine on birdsong dogs in 1865 and described the perfect cur dog.
Yeah.
And when I got a hold of that, and I've got a copy of it from Emory University, where they kept it and used his articles for literary because
Well,
he was such a talented writer. But I mean, it's a perfect description of what a cur dog ought to be.
well, do you think that maybe, just maybe, that a lot of cur dogs had a lot of fox dog in them?
Sure,
Because you figure
or the heavy hair and the flag tail and
like the coonhound breeds all kind of came from the fox dogs as well, and you figure, especially in the early 1900s, probably fox dogs were way more prominent than coon dogs.
Right.
So,
and coon dogs just mostly a fox dog that
treat coon.
become a coon dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the coonhounds are all new, and foxhound breeds have been, pedigreed for hundreds and hundreds of years. Sure, yeah. Blots included.
Yep. So
Blots got more July in them than anything else. I don't mind saying it. I think I could go to court and win that case.
I wouldn't doubt it.
A fellow in Union Mills, North Carolina, in the early 1900s, by the name of Thomas C.D. Priest, bred the Sugarloaf Julys. George Garrett's book documents them, and H.C. Bryant's articles in the Charlotte paper writes lots of articles about the brindle Julys. Country was covered in them. 50 years before Plots had a brindle dog. And the leopard curs too, I mean, it's just common sense, that they were brindle and leopard colored dogs with rough coat of hair and glass eyes and an ill temper. There's not no big mystery to that.
Yeah.
Die-hard plot man at one time. I remember Plot Association for many, many years and support them, but it's just, they all come off the same tree back there 7,500 years ago.
Oh, yeah. I was just talking to John Jackson not too long ago, and I kind of what we discussed was, I think the Plots, leopards, and the cur dogs of today, 100 years ago, would be real hard to distinguish.
Thing. Oh, always one and the same.
Yep.
Well, John's a very good friend of mine. I've known him forever,
as
far back as I can remember, and shared a lot of information. And he, in my opinion, is the best plot authority there ever, including plot family. I mean,
I would believe it. I've heard.
Went up to
stories.
Taylor Crockett's with John one time to do it. He done an interview on Taylor Crockett and got to talking about the leopard spotted plots. And this is many years ago. John recorded this and put it in plot yearbook too. He's talking about they had just whole packs of leopard dogs.
Yeah.
In addition to everything else, at that point, they wasn't registered as plots. They were either brindle curs. And I grew up hunting with Kermit Allison when I was a little boy, and he come from Waynesville, right up there. Grew up with the plot family. And when I got my first leopard cur, he told me it was the same breed as his breed, and I said, "No, sir, Mr. Allison. This here's a leopard cur." He said, "Well, you got leopard curs, and I got plot curs. Just depends on what color they come, what you call." I'd heard that, when I was 14 years old. They were from a plot breeders that had plots before they were ever registered, that they were at one time one and the same.
Yeah.
And the Julys not far away.
Yeah.
And some mountain curs. I think John's got a mountain cur now. I think that's what he's got. But he's a plot enthusiast if there ever was one. Plot historian par excellence.
Absolutely. So, when we and you were texting last night, you said you had a July that was registered, that you got registered as a leopard. You mind talking about that?
I did. Brindle Sandy.
Okay.
I got her from Tommy Joe Stewart in Grayson, Kentucky, and he was partners with Chuck Allen in Danville, Iowa. Very prominent. Tommy Joe's passed away several years ago. Chuck's still, I think, active in it. But she was a kind of a red leopard with brindle from up on her shoulders and head. You would have never, ever guessed she wasn't a leopard cur. But look at her. She wasn't like Blondie. She wasn't that big of a dog. Had a good coat of hair. I've got lots of pictures of her, but I took her out with people in single register, let her straight run and raccoon. She was about 3 years old when I bought her, and Chuck had used her for a coyote dog. And she'd got chewed up real bad fighting coyotes, and had half a ear chewed off. And they run them for a few years, and then they kind of retire them and go to hunting their young dogs. They don't have much time to hunt an old dog, So that's how I come about her. But she's the only one I registered with the ACDA. I still got her papers, I'm sure.
Okay.
But now I used her July pedigree. I didn't claim she was something she wasn't. Put the July names and numbers and everything right on her paper. And I bred her to Jake.
Okay.
Got real good dogs from it. Real good dogs from it. I think I kept had 2 females I kept out of that. My good friend Bob Julian, a July breeder, took them and started them with his dogs on gray fox and cat. And run them in a pen when they were pups. I called one of them Calico and the other one Brindle Girl. I raised, Calico got run over. I raised puppies out of the Brindle, which was a half, bred her back to Jake. They were, for all practical purposes, just a typical leopard cur.
Mm-hmm.
They were a quarter, but now I bred some out of that same female, the half breed, back to another Prairie View copper male I had. It was like a half mate to the Blondie.
Okay.
Big buckskin leopard colored dog, and I bred them back the other way, 3/4. And I had a lot of people wanting dogs from down the eastern part of the state that hunted gray fox and cat. They really, hunting in thick brush and thicket. Extreme speed's not what you need, but you need a dog with that Charlie Walker grit that'll, don't come out of the thicket. They gotta have the go power, but speed's not the question. It's can they stand the briars and brush till they run it and catch it. A lot of cat hunters, so I learned, have been doing that for years, crossing, running dogs and coon dogs to get a dog that handled a little bit better and got enough go to fox hunt, but not as much go as a purebred July.
Okay.
My experience, that anytime you crossed them on anything, coonhound or a Walker foxhound or anything, you never had that extreme adrenaline, high-powered speed demon you had in pure full-blooded Julys.
Took something out of them.
You could water them down and change them and make them handle better, but you'd lose a little bit of that extreme. Which I run some in places where a dog, run these coyotes might go 10, 15 miles, and I've had some dogs that I thought was fast, but I'd try to run them with those dogs, and after 30 minutes or so, they wouldn't be within miles of the July running a coyote like that. Wouldn't even be in the same country with them. You just have to hunt with dogs like that to see what they're really geared up to do and can do.
Mm-hmm.
Just ground covering machine.
Yeah.
I had some real drawbacks though.
What were they?
You wasn't going to get them back the same day you turned them loose.
Yeah. Especially in those days before GPS.
Hey, I run wildlife collars on them. But, that didn't help me catch them. I could kind of have some idea where they were going, but that might take them 2 and 3 days to come home. They'd come home 10, 15 miles. And people call me up. We'd cross the river or whatever and say, hey, you got some of them. They call them leopard curs, because that's all they know that I have is leopard curs. Your leopard curs over here in the creek bottom. I say, well, it's on the way home. It'll get here. And they had a little bit of a disposition that was difficult to deal with. You didn't keep male dogs in the same, not even on the same farm. But I've had them that would literally kill each other. The more than I could do to separate them. Talking about the full Julys.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't put a strange male in the pen with in his pen, you'd kill it. It's right there on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
If they got If they got in a fight, you had a real problem. They would not quit just because you were trying to make them quit. You'd have to physically separate them. I've heard people when I was young talk about blocks are mean. Blocks are,
Oh yeah,
just
heard that.
just talk. But I can say, it's not a fault. It's just what they are. But when a July decides to take a hold of something, it's going to do some damage. And they don't forget it. They just don't forget it. Most of them that I had that were full-blooded would not let nobody get nowhere near them other than me. Wouldn't nobody else catch them for you in the woods or anything.
Yeah.
Not even where they were trees or bayed. And they would bite. They were just had bad nature in that respect. But I put up with all of that for about 20 years just to hear them hunt and run.
Obviously, you like something.
I haven't thought about it in months till I came across your interview there last night. I got it on my mind. I hunted down east a lot with a man named Bob Julian. He was in his 70s when I met him, and he had bred Julys all his life, and his father had them before him. Way back. People first imported them around here. And it was just more than I could about comprehend to listen to that pack of dogs he had when they'd get on the track. It was just every breath was like they were going to catch it. Just had an excitement to them that nothing I'd been around in a lifetime of hunting. Bear dogs or coon dogs. Or the Walker foxhounds that run around here would run till the sun come up and they'd meander back.
Mm-hmm.
But they never would catch unless there was something wrong with the fox. If you've been around fox hunting much, the nighttime fox hunters, they run at a steady pace and they just run round and round till he goes in a hole when the sun comes up.
Well, that's kind of the daytime fox hunters around here that hunt off a horseback, the mounted fox hunt around here.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Kind of what they want. They don't want to catch them.
Oh, no.
Conkey's Outdoors is proud to be a sponsor of Tree Talking Time. Family, hunting, tradition is the Conkey's motto. They understand the importance of passing down the tradition of hound hunting. They are a family-owned business that treats you like family. They also understand the importance of having the gear you need when you need it. Conkey's carries everything for your next hunt, and it ships to your door quick. They also offer great warranties on all tracking systems and financing options. Check them out at conkeys.com. You can also use the code TreeTalkingTime5 in all caps to save as well.
I sold that Blondie dog to Ben Hardaway in Georgia. I'm sure you're familiar with who he was.
No, I'm not.
He wrote a book. His horse threw him and busted his skull when he was in his 80s, and when he was in the hospital, he wrote a book called Never Outfoxed.
Okay.
And he called me up when he was in the hospital. I got acquainted with him because he was just looking over magazines and everything, writing his book. But he had grew up and hunted with the George Garrett that imported the Julys to Georgia. Very fascinating man. Very, very fascinating man. But he had bred a strain of dog that still exists today called the Midland Crossbreed. And just about all of these formal hunt clubs to get around them, they either have them or know people that run Ben Hardaway's dogs. He developed a breed of dogs by crossing Julys and English foxhounds and Penn Merridales to get dogs that were biddable and deer-proof.
Okay.
And I took Blondie down there, and his kennel man turned about 75 dogs loose out of a pen. Just as hard as they go, and he just told them to kennel up, and all of them turned around and walked right back, just like the obedience-trained dog. The obedience-trained, all of them, were hunting on horseback. They have to keep them under some kind of control. And he bred for years and years to get a more biddable dog. He said the pure Julys were just not biddable. So he had to modify them. But he hunted like that. But now there's one club around here, Yadkin Valley. They hunt Penn Merridales.
Okay.
You should have plenty of them up your way.
That we do.
They're a little houndier.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of fox dog we're talking about, but very popular. But I think the Midland crossbreeds are probably main thing for the hunt clubs. He's, I think, passed away maybe 20-some years ago, but he would go to Europe and take his horses and his hounds.
Jeez.
You need to check his book out. Prince Charles hunted with him. John Wayne hunted with him. I don't know how many presidents this man got around.
I just looked it up. You can buy it new for $178.63.
You can get a used one for about $22 on eBay. They're out there. But it's a good book. It's a real good book. Real good book. Two good books on July. One being his. The other one is George Garrett's 50 Years with Fox and Hound. George Garrett is the man that brought most of the dogs down from Maryland to Georgia.
Okay.
He gives a description of them, a name, and individually all the dogs and the dates and the times and description of them. Well, that was a good read.
I have to check that out.
If you want to get to the root of it, I ordered a book from Ireland called In Search of the Kerry Beagle.
Okay.
The man that wrote this book had been dead maybe 40 years, and his wife found a manuscript doing his estate and got somebody to publish it. So the book's wrote maybe the 60s or something like that. He takes a train ride up into the mountains of County Kerry, Ireland, to hunt with the famous Kerry Beagles. He'd heard about all this. This guy's a sports writer, finest fox hunting in England and Scotland and wherever. And it's one of the most interesting books I've ever read on anything. This man's description of traveling through the mountain peaks in Ireland. You hear the cows chewing their cud and cobblestone streets and little villages. But it's a good book on the Kerry Beagle.
Mm-hmm.
And My Privileged Life by Thaddeus Ryan also is about the Kerry Beagle. This is the family that Ben Hardaway visited in Ireland and hunted with, and this guy's grandson comes over to Ben Hardaway's in the summer and gives a seminar on horse riding hunter jumpers.
Mm-hmm.
The family's bred those dogs for 400 years.
Jeez.
That sounds like a stretch, don't it?
A little bit.
Get a copy of the book, or I'll loan you mine, and you'll see that these are the ancestor of the leopard cur.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's high 10 leopard curs right there. I mean, they're identical.
I don't know if we talked about that on the podcast, but I know you've told me that before.
They're a foxhound, but they're not genetically kin to an English foxhound.
Okay. They've
got the foot and the ear and all the qualities in the leopard curs. Of course, they're not like they were when they were imported over in 1812, where the original Julys come from either. But
yeah,
you'll read a lot of the common things that make a leopard cur not just an ordinary cur, and you wonder, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
My granddad hunted curs, but they were bulldog crossed on a hound or a shepherd crossed onto a hound, or just a common cur. But now it gets me back to when I first got to being a student of Julys and July breeders. I was trying to figure out what made a leopard cur, and what made him tick the way he ticks, and the rest of them can talk. They've got a different, something a little different.
Yeah.
The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, that everything that is has already been. And if somebody comes up with a strain of dogs and says they were bred up a holler over there for 100 years and nobody ever seen them, well, they probably ordered them off a railroad or a stagecoach somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I got into them. It was just a fascination of knowing what made my dogs different from the other coon dogs in the coon dog world.
I think it's very interesting, and that's why, when we were texting back and forth last night, I'm like, man, we need to talk about this because I need to dig a little deeper.
I don't know if there's anybody that would have any of those cross, a July and a leopard cur cross, because people By the way, people done the same thing with plots.
Mm-hmm.
You could take these brindle, and I bought several Julys that were brindle just like a chocolate plot. And people come here to pick up leopard cur puppies, and they'd see them big brindle and leopard colored dogs, and they say, "You've been hiding them old fashioned leopards out here all along." I say, "Those are purebred Julys. You know, you couldn't convince them, but plot people would get them and cross them onto their plot. I've had bear hunters. I sold a lot to bear hunters. I sold a lot of those brindle Julys to hog hunters down in Alabama. Sent a lot of them to big game hunters on the West Coast. I done, you know, most of it's kind of like you're talking about numbers. I could just only tell what my dogs were doing by the wildlife collar going beep, beep, beep most of the time because they were gone when I turned them loose, you know.
Yeah.
But these hunters on the West Coast would send me all grades of pictures and videos of mountain lions and boars and bears, and, you know, somehow or another they could catch the game with them.
Yeah.
There's no question people have used them for a lot of things for a lot of years.
Oh, absolutely.
The July breeders, like Charlie was talking about, they go to the July National and run in the pens. Like competition hunting changed coon hunting, running in pens has changed dog fox. You know, the fox dogs that are, you know, after about 30 years of that and breeding for dogs, it takes a different dog to win in a pen.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to be a lot tougher because there's always something there to chase round and round and round. It takes a lot tougher dog. It doesn't take nose and it doesn't take hunt, but it takes tough, sure. And it's kind of changed the Julys.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know, the kind that run in the field trial world. I always have on my mind who is it down in South Georgia that still got Julys that have never seen a pen. They kept and bred them, you know.
Yeah. I'm
sure they're out there.
Honestly,
I think you're the man to find them.
The person, you know, if somebody was out there, I'd almost imagine they're probably a deer hunter more than anything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Anybody that's
you go to any of these deer, ever go to these deer field trials they have down east?
I've never been to any. I've heard some stories about them.
Well, it's just, you know, just like the fox hunt, except they run deer and score them, just, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a tougher dog yet. It weeds out the unphysical dogs for sure. But sure. That's deer hunting's unbelievable how the sport of hunting them with dogs has exploded.
Yeah. I've got to do it.
That July history, they kind of started out that way too, though. They talks about them running deer to the river in the 1800s with them and catching them.
Okay.
I think you have to have something in a breed of dog. You can't breed something out of dogs that don't have it in them to start with somewhere way back.
Mm-hmm.
I was researching all that July history, and I found a letter a man wrote a July breeder, and this was after the Civil War and the War of Aggression on the South had just destroyed the economy, and they'd lost all their big packs of Julys, and the man was asking advice how to get the speed back in his dogs, that he didn't have anything like he had prior. And the man wrote him back to find the most full-blooded July that he could, to find the one with the shortest ears, and inbreed on it for 2 or 3 generations, and your speed will return.
Interesting.
And I scratched my head, and after I read that, you know, in these letters, you know, this was one of the original breeders of the Georgia July,
mm-hmm.
telling him to breed for these physical characteristics, which we hear don't have anything to do with ability. But that was, you know, it sounded like, well, why? Because that was the way to be breeding away from a long-eared, round-eared, cold-trailing hound, was to breed to a short-eared, heads-up dog. You most likely had more of the true July blood in it. And if you inbreed on it for a couple of generations, the breeding was so strong that it would breed back to it. So I thought I'd try that with my leopard curs. And I wound up with short-eared dogs with cowlicks on their shoulders. In the second and third generation, did not have it before. I may have got them a little too short-eared for a hound standard, but it had to be there to breed back on it to start with.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
I think it's the way with a lot of these breeds. They've got a variety of stuff in them.
Oh, yeah.
But if they've got any of the purebred stuff in them, you can breed it back.
And, you know, somebody, I remember several years ago reading this online. It was kind of a discussion. It was on Facebook, going back and forth, and about, you know, how houndy the leopard breed has gotten over the last several years.
Oh, Lord.
And his point was maybe that, you know, it wasn't necessarily crossbreeding. It was that maybe and he was somebody that was very much into like competition coon hunting. And he was saying about, you know, how maybe it's not that there's a crossbred, but it's just that the dogs that suit people better today are the houndier ones. And he had a valid point.
Sure.
Know, if
selective breeding for it, so they're breeding to that side, just like I bred the other way.
Exactly. So it's not that people were necessarily crossing hound in; it's that people were looking for hound type traits. So the hound type appearance came along with it.
For that kind of dog, I think so. I think I was one of the few people that were breeding and kind of doing the opposite in leopard curs. While the majority of them were gradually breeding for a more of a dog that conformed to the coonhound world, I was kind of trying to go the opposite direction with them. Mm-hmm. They're both in there. There were some real houndy dogs registered in the 60s and 70s for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Real houndy. You know, it didn't have to nobody put nothing in it. It was already there if you wanted that kind of dog and bred on it. And you could take dogs out of the same litter. You know, that were take the shorter eared, like the man said, pick the shortest eared dog and breed on it, and they'll breed back that way.
So just an anecdotal thing, and you know, here that I had, you know, I had a litter of puppies last year. They're 3/4 leopard, 1/4 plot, and
all right,
sent one out to Ohio, and she is I think he said she's 39 pounds. Little short-eared cur dog. Meanwhile, her brother, I gave him to my nephew, and I ended up getting him back. He's probably pushing 70 pounds. Big long ears. He's bigger than his dad, who's half plot. He's bigger than his grandfather, who's a pure plot. And I'm just like, here these two puppies come out of the same daggum litter.
Same.
And I'm just like, where the heck did this come from? And now, from what I'm told, where I got the plot dog, his sire was big. So I'm guessing this is great grandpa.
Brandenburger's Pioneer Drum. A lot of people I grew up with, they just thought that was awful. Dale Brandenburger bred bloodhound in that dog, you know. Yeah. It didn't be, which it was already there. I think Nola Ferguson's dog showed bloodhound. I think they had a little bit of, you know, like everything else, the people had crossed one way and the other there. Mm-hmm. For years, you could breed it back. I'll give you an example. The Pester female you asked me about, that didn't have Pester on her papers. She was the kind of the runt, and she was black with brindle feet. You know, looked like a lab at a distance if you didn't see her brindle. And litter mate to the Tigger dog was old Wayne. And he was a big dog with rounder ears and a big screaming bald mouth. And Pester sounded like a bird chirping. You could hear it from miles away on the tree. She had a real high-pitched chirp, kind of like a July. You know, litter mates, but they didn't look like they come out of the same.
Yeah.
You know, didn't look. You know, they had the ability. She didn't. She was strictly a treeing machine. She was a real little tree dog. She's just what I was thinking. A shorter-eared dog would be more of a quick treeing dog. And Tigger, I'm sure, was a trailing machine.
Yeah.
It's in them. It's in them. Yeah.
That's just funny. You know, we've both seen the same things.
I really like plots. I've not went to the plot days since they moved it to Tennessee, but I went as long as they had it down in South Carolina, Rock Hill. I corresponded with people that, especially that had the old time plots,
Yeah.
Clyde Neater, he had leopard colored plots, and he come up to Kermit's and brought Kermit Allison a Maltese plot and brought me a leopard plot. She was liver colored. But now I went and got Richard McDuffie go with me. We went all the way to Dyersburg, Tennessee to hunt with a man that run ahead and full cry. Wanted anybody wanted to hunt with a leopard plot to come out there. Joe Criswell had a female named Kitten. Beautiful blue leopard dog. Big houndy dog with a big long ball mouth. We went out and listened to her trail coyotes at night. She wasn't a coon dog, but she was a registered plot, but she was a blue leopard. But now, best I could determine, those dogs had a lot of running dog in them. Neater had, and John Bowens, and they bred those dogs. They had like a double coat of hair and just a different looking dog.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. James Wanna kept and bred those dogs for a while, and he got out of it. There's probably nobody breeding them now. That hair kind of like a Chesapeake Retriever.
Okay. Interesting.
No doubt come from the July. Yeah, no doubt come from the July. But the first year they had that plot days down in Rock Hill, Clyde tied them dogs out, and you could just imagine what people were saying about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a guy from West Virginia, I believe his name was Beavers, had two down there. I don't know, time flies. It's been 15 years, maybe longer. Had hair like golden retrievers.
Jeez.
Perfect plots. Perfect looking plots, except for that 6-inch long hair and that big long tail blowing in the breeze.
Yeah.
And I was going to buy one of them. I didn't have enough money. I was trying to find somebody to loan me the money. But anyway, John wound up buying this female. I think he called her Shaggy. Now, where that come from, I don't know. It was,
mm-hmm.
confirmation in the ears and everything. They just had a recessive gene somewhere that went back to that Shaggy July.
Yeah.
Which I had several I registered as. I hadn't seen one registered as a Shaggy July in years and years in the horn, but I went all the way down to Mount Vernon, Georgia, and bought some that had hair longer than a golden retriever.
Jeez.
Good fox dog. Look like collies. But I think it's, in all of those dogs, and it shows up. But the plots, you don't, I just found them interesting for a lot of reasons. But you could get different things out of plots.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I've seen shaggy or 6-inch, but I have seen a couple heavy-haired, rough hair, yeah. Not a slick-haired.
Like my leopards, like what's on my leopard curve head, yeah.
And I have seen a few of them it was an APA event a couple years ago that I saw them.
Ask John, the old Shaggy. I think he bred her to a Karelian bear dog, whatever that is. It's like a Spitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he kept old Shaggy till she died. Okay. And I wanted that dog just for a conversation piece. I really liked her looks, but people back then would bring all kind of plots from all over the country down there. I really enjoyed that.
There was a dog. I'm trying to think if I want to say the dog's name was Harper Valley Shag.
Yeah, I've got some good pictures of him. Went out to Missouri and bred my old queen dog to him. If that wasn't a July, I've never seen one.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, that dog looked like a straight July.
Yeah, I think he was. I went hunting with him out there that night, too. Drove 22 hours out there and then went hunting that night. Henry rode with me out there.
Okay.
Went out there several times, but Henry went with me on that trip. And he had bought, Billy Williams had bought these dogs, Shag and Cindy from Mike Crawford. Cindy looked just like a registered red bone.
Okay.
And that Shag dog, you see, I've always liked that look. Mm-hmm. And he had dogs that direct sons of Nimrod out there I could have bred to, but oh no, I wanted to breed to that cur-looking thing, Harper Valley Shag.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy, you talk about some funky-looking puppies. Looking back, I'm more sure that's what he was than ever. He's bound to have been. That's July country out there for sure.
That's what I thought when I saw pictures of him. I'm like, that dog looks like a straight July.
He was about silent. And when he opened on track, he's just like that Blondie female and several more I had. It sounded like he slammed the door on a rat terrier's tail. He'd scream and squeal and yip and yap, and then he'd shut up, and next thing you know, you'd hear him hit a tree way ahead of the rest of the dog. Now, he was an impressive dog, but he was different from most leopard curs.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I don't know that I've ever seen one look more like a July than him. I've seen some Noah Leggett had to start with. I just fell in love with his dogs, but I think thinking his Julys were leopard curs first time I ever seen them.
Mm-hmm.
He had lots of big yellow, heavy-haired dogs like that, lots and lots of them. I couldn't tell which were which, to tell the truth about it.
Yeah.
Not that, looking back,
mm-hmm.
It don't bother me at all to look back at it and think that now. I probably would have made a few different decisions. I probably wouldn't have bred to that shag dog. But Queen was out of Jezebel. I mean, she was a first generation dog, and she was getting old. Billy wanted me to breed her to a dog he had called Nimrod's Timber.
Yep.
Like Nimrod and Cleopatra. I was about to get scarce, but I probably could have made a better decision. But I had to have some pups out of shag. And probably would have known what to do with them pups better. The Cleo female I bred her to my terrier dog first time when they were both young dogs, and I done away with the whole litter because they were long, wavy-haired things like that. Come all kind of funky colors I had never seen. And I didn't know what to think about it, didn't know where it come from. I suspect a lot of them dogs was just a couple generations back or somebody crossed something like that into them in those days.
Yeah. Yeah,
just as much as there were, the black and tan hounds. I think there was a lot of black and tan coon hounds.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
It's easy to, you take a Merle dog and you cross it with a black and tan, a July. Like, you could cross a Merle dog with a lot of stuff, and you're going to get dogs
leopard cur.
Look like a leopard. So
sure.
And especially if you took a double Merle dog, you can cross to anything, and you're going to get a whole litter of Merle puppies.
That's another interesting thing. That Merle color doesn't transmit in Julys like it does in leopard curs as far as being a problem with the white and the albinoism. They don't have near that trouble.
Wonder why that
Not
is.
all double Merles are deaf and blind, especially in the Julys. And lots of those real pretty straw-colored, cream-colored Julys, you don't see no spots on them, but you breed them to a high tan, black and tan colored female, and you'll get blue leopard puppies. It takes the black parent to bring the leopard color to where it's, them yellow ones are just yellow on yellow. By the time they're 6 weeks old, it fades in.
Yeah. And
you don't know they're leopards till you breed them to a dark colored dog, and then you get a bunch of leopard puppies.
I knew that just from my half plot dog out here. He's a red Merle dog. And when he was a puppy, you very, very plainly could see that. Now today, he looks
gone, ain't it?
It's not gone, but it's a lot harder to see, especially if you don't know what you're looking at. Like, I get told all the time that I got a pretty red bone. Everyone just thinks he's a red bone. And
Vernon Leggett had a real good dog called Logan. He was almost red, but had a blue saddle right up on his back.
Mm-hmm.
Time he was 6 years old, he looked like a red dog with a dark back.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have known he was spotted if you hadn't seen him when he was young.
Yeah.
The yellower, the lighter they are, the more that fades in.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots of them Julys are genetically leopard, Merle color. It just don't show in the yellow dogs.
Yeah.
Most people don't think too much about it. I had heard some people say that, why don't you breed that out? I've heard this, I think, from July people and plot people. If you bred that out of them, you just have another dog.
Yeah.
Ben Hardaway was convinced that Merle gene was connected to the keenness. Convinced, one of the most prominent breeders in the foxhound world, but he was convinced that Merle color somehow didn't cause it, but it's connected to their alertness.
You figure you look at a lot of the dogs that come in Merle. I mean, you're seeing it more and more now in all kinds of other breeds.
Australian Shepherds, they're just everywhere.
So.
Yeah, that was a rarity, for any kind of dog. Now you got dachshunds and poodles. I've seen a leopard-spotted poodle somewhere the other day. Oh, well.
You got French bulldogs and everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think at least in regards to the foxhounds and the leopards, he's got a point there. I don't know if it's...
If you keep the brindle in your Merle dogs, you don't have near the albinoism.
Okay.
Breeding Merle to Merle, if they've got brindle trim, you'll almost never get the albinoism you will if they don't have brindle. Just, like.
Gotcha.
And you've seen pictures of my Jake dog.
Yeah.
He was a real light-colored dog.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. A lot of people tried to tell me he was either a Treeing Walker or he was a double Merle. And I could breed him to leopard-colored females, and half his puppies were saddleback black and tans. Right. He was something completely different. He was a Merlican.
Okay.
You'll find it in Great Danes. I've never known any other leopards to have it, which is his mama come out of some dogs up in the mountains that were a little different, that carried a lot of them would be born white, like a blue tick, and color up.
Okay.
It was a different gene, but now you'd think, well, that dog's a double Merle, but no, double Merle, you breed it and you're going to have a bunch of double Merle puppies for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the way to find out, is to breed them. Proof's in the pudding, but I could breed him to about any spotted female and get half the puppies would be high tan black and tans. The other half would be usually a yellow Harper Valley shag colored looking.
Okay.
He stayed a lot of the prettiest pumpkin colored and yellow leopard legged dogs. He carried it in a big way. Sam, people called him Orange. Man, come down here. I said, which one of these dogs you want to breed to? He said, I want to breed to that orange colored dog. That had just about got gone in those dogs, and Sam's litter mates were not that color. I think one more in the litter might have been. The rest of them were like, blue or black and tan.
Mm-hmm.
And then Richard kept pig dog out of Sam, which not only was that pumpkin color, but short-eared dog.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about the bird song, man, telling about the breed to the short ears to get the speed back. Because when I look back, the ones that were wanted pop up in the litter that were shorter eared than the rest of them, they'd seem a little more alert, a little more heads up, a little quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite the cold trailing dogs. I'm talking coon dogger. I'm not talking July. All the Julys I had were wired. I don't think I ever had a sensible pure July. They were all of them on the edge. Right. I mean, I've seen a lot of people, and real popular around here is what people call a July walker.
Yeah.
If you look on, if they're registered, they might be 1/8 or 1/16 July. And there's a reason why them people breed them like that. They want what the July's got, but they don't want so much of it. Because it's just too high octane.
Very interesting. I could sit here and talk to you for days, but unfortunately, I gotta get this edited and turn
Well, I appreciate you calling me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, I have too. And one of these days, I am going to come down there.
Well, I'll be glad to have you down, Ben.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you, Rex. I really do appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Ben.
You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tree Talking Media. And until next time, keep them talking in the timber.